Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and today I am super excited. Today marks the return. It's been a few years. Geoff Ogilvy, the 2006 U.S. Open champion, a really great professional golfer for a long time, one of the great golf minds that we have around, joins me to talk about the players. We have an in-depth chat about TPC Sawgrass and you know what the golf course presents for a high-level tour player and why it's become a golf course that's really hard to predict what's going to happen, which, you know, you could go a lot of different ways. Like, I think gamblers are frustrated with it, like people that are trying to pick winners. But I think a golf course that has a wide range of winners is probably like a very well-designed championship golf course. When you think about that, it allows a lot of different players to succeed. So Geoff and I talk a ton about that, and then we talk about just pro golf in 2025. We get nitty gritty on some player swings, and then we talk, you know, at length about Scottie and kind of his impact on the top of the game. This was super fun. It was great to chat with Geoff again, and hopefully we'll have him back on more often. So without further ado, let's get to Geoff Ogilvy. But with further ado, we're going to talk about our partner, Perfect Practice Putting Mats. Perfect Practice, they make awesome stuff. I have to say, I have gone a couple years. My putting mat went the way of a garage sale rogue. I left a garage sale that we were putting on when we moved, and I came back and all my golf stuff was gone. Not clubs, but like all my golf practice stuff was just gone. And, you know, my wife was counting the money, and I think like the vast majority of the money we made was from my golf stuff, including my putting mat. So I've been a few years without a putting mat, and I have to say, I love this Perfect Practice putting mat in particular because the way I like to practice putting, it promotes. I like hitting like straight putts when I practice putting. Like, to me, the keys to putting are getting the ball rolling on line and your speed control. Like, those are the two keys to putting. So to me, I really like just like basic practice on a flat putt because I can tell, like, is this ball coming on the right line? And to accentuate that, my favorite thing about their putting mat is they have effectively two chalk lines. They have two holes. They have a bigger one that's like a regulation hole and a smaller one like you've seen on probably a lot of practice greens, the small cup. And they have like two chalk lines. That's a drill that I used to do a ton of work with when I used to try and play good golf. And what I've done, I've set it up in my office and I hit putts, and it's really helped when I've played. I feel so much more confident because really, like, I'm just trying to hit the ball on the line. It's not making putts. And if you hit the ball on the line, it goes in generally if you got a good stroke. So they've got a bunch of other tools that you can use to help your putting. They've got a gate. They've got the eye alignment mirror, which is a really great way to practice too if you want to work on your setup. This is a company that has devised a lot of products that are really good for putting, which is something that like is really fun to get good at. I think like one of the things I regret from my younger years playing golf was I wish I had as much fun putting as I have in my older years when I practice way, way, way less than I used to. So if you want to check out their stuff, go to perfectpractice.com. Our promo code is 20% off with Fried Egg, no spaces. That's 20% with Fried Egg. And if you order before March 15th from them, there's an additional 20% off. So you get 20% off and then another 20% off with one of their promotions going on right now. So go to perfectpractice.com, use the promo code Fried Egg. Big thanks to them for sponsoring the pod, and let's get to Geoff Ogilvy. All right, back in action.
Back.
Geoff Ogilvy. It's been a long time since we talked on the pod. We've talked a lot, just not on the pod. It's wonderful to have you back here.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Hey, it's Players Week. Where do you stand on the fifth major discourse right now?
Look, it's the best tournament in the world that isn't a major. Like, does it need to be one? Like, I don't know. I just hate that they try to force it. I think if they'd done the other tactic and decided and just forced it down everyone, no, it's not a major. Every press conference, every Tuesday at the players, everybody on the same narrative. No, this is not a major. It's just a great tournament. This is not a major. Media would have forced it into being a major. But if you try to tell everyone that it is a major, they're going to just get stubborn and say it isn't. I don't think it matters. I mean, it carries what majors carry: a long-term exemption, big purse, tough course. It has that same thing the Masters has. It has the same course every year, so it builds tradition and history. I don't. All that matters is that the Hall of Fame ballots, and at the end of everyone's career, that it doesn't register as a major. For all other intents and purposes, it feels like a major when you're playing it, and I'm sure to win it, it feels pretty special. So, and it's semantics at that point. I just think it's a great tournament.
One of my favorite takes that I've heard is Garrett Morrison's on this. And he said, it's not a major, but he would like history to apply half majors to everybody who's won a player. So you get a half instead of a full major. And when you start to do that, like a lot of careers make a lot more sense. Like Jason Day, 1.5 majors. Like that, he's not a one major player, right? 1.5 majors. Like Davis Love III all of a sudden has 2 majors, right? Like
Fred Couples, Greg Norman, Steve Elkington. Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. Adam Scott.
Yeah, it all makes sense. Like it kind of falls into the line when you apply this like half major thing. I think like it's an interest. I completely agree. Like just generally, like what doesn't work is telling consumers something is something when it isn't something. Like if you really want something to happen, you shouldn't tell people what you want to happen. That's like a recipe. It'd be like me saying to my 4-year-old daughter, like, I really want you to flush the toilet. What I tend to find works better is when I say, whatever you do, do not flush the toilet. And then she flushes the toilet.
Absolutely. It's human nature, right? We can't be told what to do. It's just, we're going to do the opposite. It doesn't matter. It's all timing too. Like there was definitely periods, maybe sitting in Australia right now, where the Australian Open was probably that. It was the 5th most important tournament in the world. Nicklaus won it 5 times. Gary Player won it 7 times. Everyone was there in the 70s and the early 80s. It was a special tournament, but it evolved out of that, and the Players' Championship evolved into that role. When you're at certain places, Wentworth a few times, the BMW PGA, that's felt pretty special at times too. It just depends on the fields who are playing at the time and the presentation of the course. And I just don't think it matters that much. Like it's just for the talking heads to talk about who's been the best player ever. You could win 4 Players' Championships and no majors, and history books wouldn't show you as very good, but every player who ever played with you would know you were one of the best players ever, So I just don't think it matters. It's a good debate at the dinner table, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like in the late 90s, the European Tour, when you had like Westy and Sergio and Colin Montgomery was still like, really formidable player. Like there was this time like that, there was like a real, like Wentworth was like a big deal. I remember as a kid waking up and like watching it. It was a huge deal. And I think the Western Open at one point was filled in this. And then, Canada at one point was considered like this huge tournament. It is cyclical. I do think like one of the things that's hurt the players the most is LIV, and just like it doesn't have we have the best field in golf anymore, like moniker, because like some of the best players in the world aren't there, and they're at other majors. And if 5 of the 30 best players in the world aren't there, then you're gonna and they are at other places, you don't have the best field in golf. So I think that's been one of the challenges. The one thing I think has worked extraordinarily well for the players and is, I think, what makes it unique amongst all tournaments that are really high profile, other than the Masters. Like if you say it's a major, if you don't say it's a major, it's a bigger tournament than a regular event is. It's a bigger tournament than a signature event is the golf course being the same golf course. And having, I think, everyone would probably agree, the most exciting stretch of golf to finish a golf tournament. The best, the most exciting finish of a golf course that we see regularly on men's pro golf is TPC Sawgrass. And I think like what's really worked well is that the audience, people tune in and they know the golf holes at Sawgrass. And that is something that takes time. It's been, 40 plus years now of this, but the golf course is really, I think, one of the stars of the week. What is it about the golf course that makes players so uncomfortable?
It's really difficult. It's a really hard course. I mean, it's my favorite sort of, I would say, TPC by a long way. It was the first one. It was Pete Dye. And you'd have to say, now that I've got an architecture hat on a little bit more regularly, it's a useless piece of land. When it began, it was a swamp, dead flat and underwater. And they created an unbelievable landscape. And the holes, if you sort of go through, I mean, everybody knows the course, but like when you play the course, it's very obviously Pete wanted to find your weakness. Like he wanted to expose what you didn't bring to the course that day. I mean, the first hole, you have to fade the tee shot, draw the second shot. The second hole, you have to draw the tee shot, fade the second shot. And that follows all the way around the course. You fade it off the fourth, you draw it into the green, 5, you fade the tee shot, you draw it into the green. Like it kind of goes all the way around that if you don't have both shots on a lot of these holes, you can't play them well. So there's that aspect. It asks you to hit some incredibly brave shots. I mean, the 17 is clearly a brave shot that you have no choice. You just have to hit it. 18 is the hardest tee shot on tour, I think, by a long stretch. When you consider the punishment for missing, you're either in the water or you're going to make a bogey in the right rough, at least a bogey. 16 asks you to hit 16 you can sort of chicken out and go left on the second shot, but you've got to hit a really high quality tee shot and a really brave second shot. It's a bit of an Augusta feel 16. You really have to take on a shot you don't want to take on. It just asks really tough questions all the way around, and there's no hole that you get to, you're like, oh, this is all right. I mean, even 9, the par 5. 9 is one of the hardest par 5s ever because of that whole bunch of the whole bunch of trees left of the green, short of the green, and then you miss the green, you make a bogey on a par 5. There's no let up hole. There's no breath where you can just say, oh, okay, we can cruise through this hole and get through it. It's just, it hits you all day. If you hit it well and you play well, you can have a really low score. As we've seen lots of guys shoot low 60s around there a few times. If you miss a shot, you're going to make a bogey or a double really quickly. And that wears you out after 72 holes.
That's the thing. Like I've talked about this. Like I feel like tournament golf, part of it is like reducing the accumulation of stress. Like stress, it's almost like stress management. And there are certain courses where it's just impossible to reduce stress. Like the accumulating effect of Sawgrass just based off of the pressure that it puts on the tee. And I think like, listen, my favorite golf courses in the world have very little water to no water. For tournament golf, for professionals, I kind of think you have to have water at this day and age to like, unless you have remarkable topography, like just incredible topography or wind or like some extraordinary natural feature. You almost have to have that in order to scare players, to get them stressed.
Yeah, I mean, the best, and not from a playing point of view, maybe, but the best viewing is asking a player to hit a shot that he doesn't want to hit. Second into 15, the Masters is a famous example. I mean, the 17th, or the tee shot on 18 at Sawgrass is asking, the player doesn't want to aim down that fairway because it's so scary. But you have to. You've got no choice. And water does that. It's binary. It's good or it's bad. You can't do it. Whereas, yeah, like you say, no water, it runs into the rough. Maybe I'll be okay if I just chicken out over there. But water is just, it's black and white. You're in it or you're not, So it forces you into making hitting shots that you probably don't really want to hit, but you have to hit them anyway.
I do agree with you about some of my favorite golf is like when you're on a par 5 and you're standing there and you're thinking, well, I don't really want to go for it, but I also don't want to lay up. And I think there are a lot of situations that, like, nine's a perfect example. And like one of the other themes of Sawgrass, I think why it's held up to technology so well is the way that the fairways move on angles, but also how the water restricts some tee shots. And the ninth is a perfect example. Like, you can't go over the water. So you're going to have to hit a very long shot into that tiny little green that rises up out of the ground, and you don't want to miss anywhere around it. So you're standing there and it's like, I don't want to go for this. Like, I could end up in any number of terrible, terrible locations. But then you're also like, I don't want to lay up. What am I going to hit? Wedge?
Yeah, I guess so 9 is the decision. You go for it, you're bringing 3 into the equation, but then you're bringing 7 or 8. I mean, some of those hollows on the right-hand side of the green, you can never get out of those. You're bringing in every number, but you're bringing in 3, which is nice. If you lay up, you're taking 3 out of the equation. You're probably taking 7 out of the equation, but 6 is very there. There's no genuinely safe way, right? I just want to make a par. Some holes in the world, most of the great holes, you can say, right, I'll give up birdie. As a pro, I'll give up birdie and I'll just take my par. But there's nothing like that at Sawgrass. You can't give up birdie to make par. You have to just go. If you give up birdie, then you're bringing in 6, 7. And it's a beautiful, it's a bit sanitized now, Sawgrass. Like, I think if they sort of Pinehurst number 2'd it a little bit, I think it could be one of the best courses in America. I think the fundamental structure of the holes and the way they're built and the way the routing's great, and it's a nice little walk. Considering it was built out of a swamp, it's an amazing achievement of a golf course. A little bit neat now, but the shots it asks you to hit are the same. It's hit good shots or pay the consequences. It's fun to play. It's fun to play, probably not on a 30-mile-an-hour wind day when the greens are rolling at 14. That gets a bit tough. But just to go play golf when it's in nice condition, it's a great place to play. Fun, even though it's hard. And that's, I think, the sign of a really great tournament course, I think, is that it's enjoyable to play even though it's really hard. For some reason, Oakmont is just really fun to play, and it shouldn't be. It's really, really hard. Pinehurst number 2 is really awkward and fun to play, but it's really, really hard. And Sawgrass kind of ticks that box too. Normally, sometimes when courses get really, really hard, they're just miserable and boring and just don't want to play there anymore. But at TPC Sawgrass, you just want to keep playing for some reason, even though you get beaten over the head every time. That's fun.
There's so much variety. I think that's part of it, where there's like every hole feels new and different. You didn't have, you are a great golfer. I would say that your career at Sawgrass wasn't necessarily representative of your talent. Was there something about the golf course that just didn't jive, or was it just never your week when you went there?
It's funny. When I first started going there in March, overseeded early days, back when I think my first one maybe was when Davis shot that 64 with the rain jacket on the last round, or whenever that was, 01, 02, something like that. And I couldn't comprehend how he shot 64 around there. It was blowing 30. I sort of, though, the first 3 or 4 I played in March, I was getting there. I had a couple of sort of mid-teen finishes, and I was sort of not that far away from the top 10. And then you miss a few cuts. If you look at everybody's career there, almost nobody, at least historically, there's some people who now, like Scottie Scheffler and that, who seem to play well there every year. But if you actually look back, everybody was very up and down at the Players' Championship. Very hard to always. No one actually ever mastered that course. But when we went to May and it was no overseed, slippery Bermuda, I was lost. It was not my spot. I mean, I've had great success. I had great success on Bermuda at Kapalua and in Florida, but not there. For some reason, I couldn't do it with the Bermuda, and it was slippery, and it's that Bermuda rough. The ryegrass rough I can get worked out. The Bermuda rough I've never got worked out in my life, and I don't know. And I got uncomfortable. And you also golf courses, when you play the same course, there's so many tournaments we play the same course every year, and some when they get to you, and you can just never get it back. You know, Memorial, I always seem to, doesn't matter how I played, I always seem to have a reasonable finish. I play bad, I'd finish 20th. I play well, I'd finish 8th or something. You know, like it was always sort of, it worked out Memorial, and that's really hard. But Sawgrass, couldn't work it out.
It's amazing how like certain courses, even like when I think back to like my mediocre amateur golf career, I always found that I played the best golf at the courses I disliked the most for the most part. Like ones that I would never talk about ever in the discourse of golf architecture, I enjoyed the most. It was like just like penal, narrow, like, you know, throw all the water you want at me, and I love that. But it's funny what you said about like when you lose it somewhere, you lose it. Yeah. Was there any other course that you had that happen?
Memphis. I don't think maybe I've made one cut out of 12 starts at Memphis. Like, I don't know. Everybody comes off Memphis. Oh, Southwind's great. I love TPC. Memphis is awesome. And I hated Memphis so much. I just couldn't play there. I didn't get it. I just thought, this place is awful. What are we playing here for? And I kept going back. I kept trying. And it's 100 degrees. And it's, I don't know. Memphis. I think I made one. Maybe I didn't make one. But I was at least 0 for 10 at the start of Memphis. Waialae was rough too. Sony, I ended up having a top 10, I think, but I think that was after about 9 missed cuts in a row.
Bermuda rough.
It was, but like Kapalua, but you don't hit it in the rough at Kapalua. Kapalua, I had great success. That was my happiest hunting ground, but then the next week it's all narrow and it just didn't fit. I hit it through the fairways all the time, and I'd fly it over the back. I was just racing for the pool. I was playing. I didn't hit the range at Waialae ever.
This is a little sidebar, but I kind of think that like Bermuda rough is like the last thing that really can create like truly the feeling for a pro of unpredictability is Bermuda rough.
Oh, it's impossible. Like when I first got into, because we don't grow up with rough, not what Americans think of rough. Our rough is more like links courses in Melbourne. It's a bit random. And I it's never really, it's a lie. It's about reading the lie and sort of working it out, sandy bits and long bits and short bits. But that consistent irrigated rough that you find in the US took me quite a while to get used to. But the ryegrass, after you can work that out. There's a skill, I think, even if it's really thick and it's Torrey Pines or it's Akron or somewhere and it's 6 inches and green, you can still find a way. Bermuda, it does something different every single time, forever. Like there's no pattern to it whatsoever. It just is random, and it's just a grass that's just built to frustrate golfers. I think it's brutal. It's a great hazard.
It makes you look.
It makes you not want to hit it in it.
It makes you look so bad too. Like you can think something's going to come out hot and it comes out dead and you end up like 40 yards short. Like it can make you look silly. I completely agree. Like your Parkland golf rough will just, throw all those roughs in a bucket. If you've seen it enough, you know exactly how the ball is going to react. Like it's rare that you get tricked. Like, the lie that's going to come out dead, the lie that's going to come out hot. You roughly know like how hot it's going to be. Bermuda is just nutty. Do you think that Sawgrass plays better? I think like a lot of people say it plays better with the overseed soft March than it does in May. It obviously plays really short in May when it's Bermuda and the Bermuda rough.
I mean, look, I enjoyed it a lot more with the overseeded rough. I think the nature of the greens is so penal when you miss, and there's so many of those little hollows that are full of long grass, and you're coming into Bermuda greens Bermuda rough from 150 yards, you could hit a 9-iron 20 yards or 220 yards. It could go anywhere. And it's going to land on Bermuda Green, and Bermuda Greens don't take any spin, and it's just like landing the ball on the 405, like it's just going to hit and go. It's just so, you can't, I don't know. It's just so unpredictable and so random that greens like that, it's nice when you're in the overseeded rough, it might be a really difficult shot, and you take going for the green out of the equation and you have to lay it up, but at least the layup is predictable. You can, I can hit this 40 yards short of the green and get it in a spot where I can pitch and putt, whereas the Bermuda, you can't do that. You can try to hit it 40 yards short of the shot, just short of the green, and you'll just get a flyer into some hollow somewhere on a downslope. Like it's the unpredictability, and it's a great hazard. But I think you could play 71 perfect holes and just get unlucky in the rough and have it 8, and I think pros, good or bad, like they're to be able to use their skill. I think most golfers on tour are quite happy if they don't have the shot. Look, I don't have the shot out of this rough. Tiger can hit the ball out of this long rough and hit it on the green. I can't. They're quite comfortable with that. But if all the practice and all the work you do on your game, it's just completely for nothing sometimes in that rough. It's just like, it doesn't matter. Every player in the world is the same from some of those lies because nobody knows where it's going. I think that lack of sort of control is very uncomfortable, and you get uncomfortable on a course and you do it 2 or 3 holes in a row and then your head is spinning. Just where's the airport,
Wide fairways with Bermuda rough. That's our gold standard now. Is you get it wide and then it's then it's like, well, you shouldn't have missed the 45-yard wide fairway. That's one of my other favorite things about Sawgrass. It's just the variety of widths that it presents. Like some fairways are really generous, some are really narrow,
and it's nice in a modern tour event that it's not driver on every hole. It's anywhere driver, 3-wood, 7-woods, 2 irons, hybrids. It's the variety you hit off the tee is a lot. So many courses we play, it's just you pull driver out and you don't even use any other club off the tee for the whole day. That course, you probably hit as many 3-woods as you do drivers, and as many sort of 2 irons or whatever that equivalent club is for people now as you do anywhere else. And each club has a choice. I mean, the first is usually not a driver. Second, a lot of players let 3-woods off, and 4 is a variety of clubs for guys. 5 is 6. 6 is an interesting hole where people hit different clubs. 10, people hit different. I mean, there's a lot of. I think that's good for the viewer too when players are choosing. There's multiple ways to play most holes there, which I think is always interesting to watch. If you just sit on a tee for 4 hours and every player just stands there and hits driver at the same target, probably gets a little boring. I think Sawgrass, you can hit irons, you can hit any different number of ways to play the holes, and none of them are definitely right and none of them are wrong. It's just different ways to navigate around the place, and I think that's usually a sign of a good course.
I think you're right about viewers too, is when you have like a lot of variety in clubs that players hit off the tee. When someone hits something different, it creates, like, it's good for any telecast when you get those moments of heightened interest where maybe you're sitting back in your seat and you lean forward because you're like, oh, we haven't seen this happen. And that's, I think, where a lot of other sports, you get those heightened moments naturally with a clock, in the game or the end of a game. In golf, like, having that different variety leads to people just kind of leaning forward. Last bit on the course. Do you have a favorite hole out there? Do you have one that stands out?
I've got some not favorites.
Maybe least favorite, least favorite and favorite.
All right. Well, I think 14 is a great hole, but I could never play it ever. 14 is a really wide fairway. 14 is like 40 yards wide, but none of us like 14. Like everybody, we all bail it further right than we should, and then we all hate the hole because right rough is terrible. But I think it's a great hole.
It's a terrible place to be.
It is.
You're right.
The right rough is awful. I mean, 20% of the time you're going to get hit on the green. 20% of the time you're not even going to find it. Like it's rough. 15, 16 are fun to play. 17 is great in a practice round. It's brilliant on Tuesday and Wednesday. During the tournament, it's not that much fun. 18, I think, is a great hole to finish. If you make 4 to win the Players' Championship on 18, wow, like that's a 4. You've hit a proper tee shot. You can't make 4 from the rough. It's very difficult to make 4 from the rough. So you've just got to hit the best tee shot of the day at that moment. That's tough. Look, I like most of it. Nothing really stands out. I think those long par 4s, I think 5 is great. I think 14 is great. I think 15 is great. They got good shape to them. They ask you to hit 2 really good shots, and they're very satisfying to play well. You know, I think sign sometimes of a good hole is you're very satisfied when you hit good shots and play it well.
You think about tournament golf, right? And playing in a round. Like they're just like those, like it's almost like a mile marker where like you hit it and it's like if you can get through, like 14 and 15 are like perfect examples. Like, and you could probably throw 13 in there too, because you just have to execute a good iron shot. But if you could go 13 through 15, even par or better, you just have to feel really good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because 10, 11, 12, pretty straightforward. 13, it depends on where the pin is and where the wind is. I mean, sometimes 13 plays like the whole field makes a birdie if the pin's on the low bit and no wind. But then you put the pin on that big knob up the top, on the top back right, and it's blowing hard. Like the whole field's 3-putting from 50 feet. 13 is sort of weather and setup dependent. But yeah, 13, 14, 15, if you par those holes every day, you're going to have a good week, I think, because it can all go wrong in those 3 holes. And then you got 16, which it's sort of famous. It's a 4.5, 16. You really make 4 most of the time. You hit the fairway. And even if you lay it up, you can make birdie. 17, you just hope that nothing goes too wrong. Yeah, it's that middle. It's the front 9's similar. I mean, 1 and 2 and 3 are pretty reasonable. 4 is not too bad. And then 5, 6, 7 are tricky. You know, the middle of each 9, I think if you can sort of get those 5, 6, 7, 4, 13, 14, 15 worked out, you're going to have a pretty good week because there's no birdies in there. The birdies are other places. And they're long shots. It's like we don't get to play, and people know this and probably get frustrated that we just drive a wedge everywhere. Those holes, 14, we hit 2 long shots. 5, we hit 2 long shots. We hit and drive a 5-iron, drive a 6-iron, like 200 yard plus for our second shot. We don't get that much. I think when we do that well, it's satisfying because we enjoy doing that. I assume other guys do too, but I like hitting a driver and a 5-iron in the middle of the green on a par 4 because we don't get to do it very much. 5 and 14 are very like that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some players at the Players. Obviously, world number 1, Scottie, incredible year last year. Did you ever, at any point in your career, did you feel like your expectations got taken to a different level? And I think like he won so much last year. I think this is human nature. Is there a challenge when you are coming off a great year? Like when you go to the next year, is there a different type of challenge? Are you in a different mindset? Can that be hard, or is it like, I think everybody just assumes it's just brimming with confidence, but is there also a challenge of resetting on a new year?
100%. I mean, I never had a year like Scott Scheffler. Even my best years, there was always a bit of crap in there. You know? If you go back to my caddy through the whole good period, Squirrel, he was always concerned about my headspace the week after I won or the week after I had a really good tournament. Just the very next week, I usually exploded because I just expected to win again. You know? And when I wasn't winning, I'd be finishing 8th, which would be like a respectable week, and I'd be just losing it. This is, no good. It's very hard to treat everything equal, if you like. Like, it's all perspective. You miss 3 cuts in a row. Making a cut is like a win. You know, and if you win 2 or 3 weeks in a row, finishing second is just a disaster. So, like, it's very hard. And Scottie, the most impressive thing about Tiger was how he kept backing it up and backing it up and backing it up and backing it up and never seemed to have that sort of expectation let down. And it'll be interesting. Scottie seems better built for it than anyone we've seen since Tiger, really, to just doesn't sort of moan and begrudge and get too spicy out in the golf course. He just seems to really enjoy playing, and he's great when he wins. He handles it so humbly when he wins, and he seems to handle losses really humbly as well. But absolutely, expectation. It's the biggest demon you have to fight, I think, as a player is expectation. I think the more expectations you can remove from yourself, the better you're going to do. Because usually when you win, it's not like you're standing on the first tee expecting to win. Like, I hope I have a good week this week, and it all just works out. And the next week's like, I'm going to win. And then inevitably your first few bad holes that you make, it feels like you're not going to win. You just have a mental explosion.
And also in the middle of the tournament, when you might think about, I'm going to win, that's when usually things go bad too.
Absolutely. It's managing expectation might be the most underrated skill, I think, for any golfer, I imagine. How many times have anyone who's played a lot of serious golf, they'll be, I'm playing golf tomorrow, so I'll hit a few balls this afternoon. You hit a few balls the night before and you hit them really well and you get onto the first tee and you're just like, oh, today's the day, and it just all goes wrong. And they're the days that go the worst. It's very difficult to just start every day as a new and just go play. So it's going to be tough for him this year. Everybody has a fall off. I mean, nobody keeps up that pace forever. Nobody, ever. I mean, Tiger didn't, Jack didn't, Hogan didn't. I mean, nobody did. So he's going to have a fall off, and how he handles that, I think, will tell us how his sort of next good run's going to be. Does he start chasing his golf swing a little bit, which he never really does? Start telling us in the media conference about his new fitness program or his new psychologist that he's working with or the new plan that he's on. I mean, we all sort of do that. Tell everybody that the good golf is coming, the good golf is coming when we have a little bit of a fall down. I think he's built better for it than most. But we'll see. Everyone has a fall off and everyone needs to give him a bit of a break. I mean, you cannot keep playing like he's playing. It's just, golf just isn't like that.
That's the thing. I mean, it's not even been like, he won the Hero. He had the hand thing with the bottle or glass of wine or whatever it was. But it has to have felt like he hasn't won in forever. He won 9 times last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. He basically won every second time he teed it up.
Yeah, he's only going to play 20 times this year, and he's now 5 starts maybe in. It's an interesting thing. Do you think someone like him who won so much last year needs to win before the Masters, or does that not matter?
I don't think for him it matters too much. I mean, historically, if you look at the Masters winners, it's usually someone who's been in pretty good form. Not often do you see someone who's been out of form on the West Coast or through Florida does well at the Masters. It's that sort of course that exposes all your weakness. You really want to have all your ducks in a row when you get there. But I think he's a little unique. I mean, he's special. He's obviously got – it's also a horses for courses. I mean, as a sort of disclaimer to that is that people who have won the Green Jackets tend to be all right there, even if they're out of form. So I don't know. I don't think he needs this word need. I don't know. I'm sure he'd like to hit some good shots and make a few putts and feel good going into it would give him his best chance. But I don't know about need. It's hard to win on tour. Like, you win 9 times and everyone just assumes, well, why aren't you winning anymore? But like, it's not that easy. I mean, great careers are 5 wins, and he had 9 of them in 1 year. So he's clearly he's won 2 of the last 3 made Masters. He's won
back-to-back at Players.
12 months, back-to-back at the Players. Like, I think he'll be going in there fine regardless of how he's playing.
You said he's a horse for a course. I'd love to find a golf course for somebody that drives it at an extremely high level, is probably the greatest iron player on planet Earth right now. It might be the best have the best short game on planet Earth right now. Of course, that doesn't fit, you know?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, that's a hallmark of every number one in the world. I mean, if like at any era, in any period, if you look at the number one in the world, it's all like, how is he doing this? Like, he's better at everything than all of us, you know? Yeah. Horses for courses. Yeah. Augusta's about the Masters is about comfort level and your headspace. And it's so obvious when you're there that the people who have green jackets in their locker are just more comfortable than everyone else. They just are. That sort of place. I'm sure Scottie will be fine. I don't think he'll win 9 times again because I don't think that doesn't happen very often. You know, that's a pretty historical year, but I'm sure he's going to be fine.
I think the other aspect of him winning 9 times is the other top end players. You know, you think about like Morikawa finished like runner up to him 2 or 3 times last year in big events. Think about Rory McIlroy. He probably went a decade in his career where he never thought to himself like, that guy's better than me. But I think last year he even said publicly that he's the best player in the world. Scotty's the best player in the world. You think about like the players around, and one of the things that makes winning 9 times really hard the next year is, I think from like all these, anybody that makes it to the top 10 in the world, anybody really that makes it almost to the PGA Tour, are so hyper competitive that they are going to raise the bar of their play in response to someone raising the bar of what the top is. Like, that is just kind of the natural way things work in society, is like when somebody raises the bar, other people raise their levels of play to meet them. And I think that's the other aspect is going to just continue to make winning at a high, like 9 times in a season, extraordinarily different, is that the other top players are so competitive, they're going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, if you look at I got on tour at the sort of early beginning of sort of 2000. I'm 18 months younger than Tiger. And the change that he made sort of in all aspects, and just the effect he had on the level played on tour over 10 or 15 years, just unbelievable. Like, it was clearly the Tiger effect was that everybody said, well, I've got to take this a bit more seriously. You know, I've got to get better because I don't want to be embarrassed by this guy. And Scotty's doing the same thing. Like, everybody's going to raise the level. I mean, like you said, if he takes Rory back to the woodshed to grind, you know, to really, really grind and say, I actually have to get better. I mean, this is Rory McIlroy. Like, he's really, really good. I mean, but we all lovingly look across the range at Rory when he's hitting balls and goes, I wish I could do that. And even he's sitting there going, wow, I need to get better if I want to beat this guy. That's good for the game. And it's raised the level for sure. I mean, the level on tour now is outrageous. I mean, number 1 has always been a special player in any era. But number 50 now, an amazing player. Number 70, it's like, wow. But the level is really, really high. And the scores we shoot, I know the setups are probably sometimes sort of showing, but even a couple of weeks ago at Honda, I mean, that place isn't easy, even set up easy. That place is hard. And we've got 59s and like 20-something under par winning the tournament. I mean, it's incredible. Like, that's no way that would have happened 15 years ago on that setup that anyone would shoot those scores. You know? And Scottie, I think the hallmark and maybe the feather in the cap of all these incredible players who get to number 1 and dominate, like have these periods, is that they have helped move the game forward, which is impressive.
Yeah. I would echo your thought about like the depth. I mean, if you go to look at like who around 30 in the world right now, and you go 28's Tom Kim, 29 Sam Burns, 30's Corey Connors. I mean, like, Corey Connors, great example. If every course was set up like Bay Hill last week or Oak Hill at the PGA, Corey Connors top 15 player, because if the golf is just pure hard execution driven, the guy's going to out execute people. But like you Akshay Bhatia is 31 in the world. Like he's been, verging on breakout. Jason Day's 33. Ben On's 32. Like, Justin Rose 34. These guys have played good golf. Nick Dunlap's won 2 times in 14 months and he's number 35. Like it's wild how deep the talent is.
It's crazy. The level's so high. I mean, when we I'm not on the tour, I'm on the range and playing every week now, but I go to the President's Cup and there's 24 players. Like, wow. Like the level is actually nuts. They all fly it, they all drive it long and straight and they hole everything. And the level being played now is outrageous. And it's fun to see, but it's going to be, I wish I was young again, but it's...
Don't we all?
But like when I cut onto the range, there was like 50 players. It's like, oh, I've got them covered. And then there was 50 players over. It's like, oh yeah, they're the good players over there. Now it's like, where's the weak player? There isn't one. There's players who probably would have been top 10 in the world 30 years ago who can't get on tour at the level they're playing. It's amazing.
I mean, it's just like the sheer number of players that can carry a golf ball 305 yards on tour now is like insane.
Even short hitters hit at 300 yards.
Yeah. I've been like fascinated. Like it seems like, Bryson, others like Rory McIlroy is like a great example of someone who's like continued to pick up speed, and like done it a little bit more slowly, more methodically. But like everybody, you turn on the telecast, like you see a guy in contention that you haven't seen in a while, and it's like, oh, he's, ball speed's up 5 miles an hour from the year before, and you're like, oh, wow, it makes me think about this guy a little bit differently. The speed, one thing that I've been fascinated by with Morikawa is like he seems like one of the guys that hasn't sought out speed. What was like the conversation when you were on tour about picking up speed, and how has that changed?
Well, it wasn't one to start with. In the sort of 90s, I came up sort of turned pro late 90s. Nobody talked about speed. Like it was just, we wanted to hit it well. Still all using blades, Pilatas. On my Q school, I used a Pilata. We just wanted to hit it well. And there was a handful of guys who could hit the ball well. Nick Price, Greg Norman, Tiger hit the ball well. David Slav hit the ball well. Freddie hit the ball well. But for the most part, we were all just trying to work it out. Like, just trying to find a way to get the ball going straight, maybe be able to draw and fade it at a ball and be really good around the greens and hole lots of putts. Nobody talked about speed. Then gradually, as the Titanium took over and the Pro V1 was probably the first time because everybody gained 20 yards overnight. The Pro V1 was at 2000. That was the first time people got excited about distance and how much easier it seemed to make the game play with a 9-iron in instead of a 7-iron, that was sort of the beginning, and it's just sort of gradually evolved to the point where length is, I think, disproportionately focused on. But yeah, it's the focus. And like when you've got a machine that you take to the range every day, which most of these guys do, which tells you how fast you're swinging it and how hard you're hitting it, that gets addictive.
Yeah.
You get addicted to seeing like 175. I've never been 175 ball speed. Oh, it's 176 today. That's good. I wonder how that happened. Let's like chase that rabbit hole. Oh, I get it to 178. Like you get addicted to this speed, and it becomes when you meet young golfers now, they introduce themselves with their ball speed almost. Hey, I'm Max Smith and I can hit it at 180. My ball speed's 185. I mean, that's how they introduce themselves. It's not like, well, I won the US Amateur or I did this or I did that. It's like I hit the ball 185. It's like it's just changed a little bit, and it's fun and it's interesting, and I think it's part of it. I mean, but it's definitely become a focus, and I think the really smart ones, you don't hear Scottie really talk about speed. Like you said, you don't hear Colin Morikawa talk about speed too much. It's still hitting the ball in the middle of the club face and hitting it where you're aiming is still more important than how far you hit it.
Especially the harder the golf gets.
Yeah. I mean, Colin's a great example. He is a great golfer, and he looks like he's going to play well the harder it gets. Like you said, Corey Connors, sort of golfer. I mean, it's just, and maybe it's just my age, and I can't chase speed anymore. I still kind of interested, if I can get some high numbers when I'm testing drivers and stuff. But I don't know. It's just evolved out of time. I think the Pro V1 and titanium started it, and lighter shafts and longer shafts. And then it's like anything. There's no one thing. It's like Tiger. And Gary Player was going to the gym in the 60s, telling everybody to get strong. And then Greg Norman did the same thing. And then Tiger sort of did it as well. And it took 30 years for people to realize that Gary Player was right. Like we're slow learners, golfers, but I think everyone's caught on now that being fit, being strong is really important. And it's sold too. It's the game. Like if you watch the Golf Channel, if you read golf magazines, if you watch the broadcast, they put the ball speed on the broadcast now. What kid isn't going to watch it and say, oh, well, Minwoo Lee's hitting it at 195. I want to do that. He's
insane.
Yeah, he's insane. I talk about that President's Cup. Out of the 24 players, there's some really long hitters on our team. I mean, Adam Scott, Taylor Pendrith, Jason Day. I mean, they fly the ball miles. And then Minwoo's just chuckling and flying it by them by 20 yards just for fun. It's just so... And that's the next generation. And there'll be another Minwoo Lee behind him in 5 years' time who flies it past him. And
well, he got Puck Eater now. He's going to be your President's Cup, specialist.
He could be.
You've seen that? He's just rolls out of bed at 190.
Yeah, he's like one of those sort of in the most in the nice way, in a cool way. That guy you just rocked up and everyone says, oh, he's the best player at that club. You'll want to hit it past out. He's the longest hitter at the local club, right? He stands there and grips it really strong and just smashes it. Falls out of bed, like you say, walks straight to the first tee. What are we playing for today? And hits the 350 down the first. He's cool to watch play. He's more like, what I like about this speed is we went this era of that video camera era. We're all trying to make our swing look good. People sort of seem to have given up on making it look good and they just want it to go fast. And people are happy to have crazy strong grips and don't really care what their swing looks like. The number they care about is ball speed and where the ball goes rather than what their swing looks like. And I think it's really cool. And I think we're going to see more of an era like we did pre-video camera where people just swing it how they swing it, which is way more fun to watch.
I think what you said years ago on this podcast, I always think about it is this was, 2018. It was Brooks and DJ, they swing it the fastest, but they also swing it the best because to swing it fast, you have to swing everything has to work so well.
That's true, I think. I mean, I think to swing it fast, your whole body has to be working well. You have to do it well. And it turns out that chasing speed might be the best way to swing it your best. It's not trying to put the club in position, but just trying to get all the power that you can. It's efficient and it's strong and it's balanced. Can't create a lot of speed if you're not using your body properly. So I think that a happy accident for chasing speed is that it's helped everyone's technique.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating thing. Let's talk about golf swings a little bit. Before we get to golf swings, what player has impressed you the most recently? What's a player that in the last few months has really impressed you?
Well, I mean, I'll pick one that no one's probably thinking about, but unless they're real golf tragics. Carl Phillips. Koala Carl, he's affectionately known in Australia. Cool
Homer
story.
pick.
Cool story. It was the sort of the Tiger Woods, the sort of the knock on to Tiger Woods of the young kid and my 3-year-old is good, and his whole life has been YouTube and Instagram. He was famous when he was a kid. Moved to Florida from Australia to be a great golfer. His whole life has been about playing golf, but he was smart. He was a great amateur. He was always good. Went to Stanford, went all the way through, finished school, goes to the web.com, goes to the Corn Ferry, just goes good finish, win, gets his card, comes out on tour, has a good week a couple of weeks ago, and then he goes bang and wins Puerto Rico. It's like people are going to sleep on this kid, but he is really, really good. Maybe the best golfer people haven't really heard of yet, unless they're really looking. He could make our President's Cup team. Like he's done really well. And it's not easy to go to Puerto Rico and shoot 26 under or whatever he did, go out leading into the last round and shoot 8 under par. Like he's that's been really, really impressive. I mean, we all focus on the top of the world rankings, and I'm interested to see Xander. I mean, Xander, I think if I had a favorite golfer, Xander's my favorite golfer. I mean, I just love the way he goes about it, and his year was so good last year, and he's clearly been a little bit hurt. And it's hard to come back from injury, and I'm interested in that, and obviously interested in Scheffler, and interested in all the International President's Cup guys. But like Carl Phillips, he's impressed me.
What about Xander makes him so interesting? Or what do you like about his game so much?
Well, physically he does everything. He swings it great. Short game is great. Putting is great. But the way he goes about it, it's so pragmatic and sensible that it's annoying. We're all a little bit emotional, and we all get a little bit annoyed when things aren't going right, and we all sort of, I don't know, like we lose sense of sort of pragmatism and like objectivity. It just seems to be so his father and that Germanic way about him. It's a bit like Bernard Langer, but in a better athlete. It's just, I don't know. I just love the way he goes about it, the way he's worked on his swing, the way he developed his swing with his father. It's really interesting, I think, that his dad had no idea about golf. So he viewed golf without any of those preconceived ideas and all those old sort of, well, you can't play golf with a grip like that. You can't play golf with a swing like that. And all those sort of rules that we get told by the old guys at the golf club when we're growing up. He didn't grow up like that. He grew up, this works, so I do it. This doesn't work, so I don't do it. And I think it's sort of, and he's a lovely guy. Seems to really competitive, but always seems to be in a good mood. I don't know. He's the model. Him and Scottie and Colin, really, if you look at the top 2 or 3 in the world at the moment. Rory's more normal. He's a normal human. He has his ups and downs and sort of gets mad and gets happy and up and down.
Might be too normal.
Too normal, He's not normal how he hits it, but he's normal how he goes about golf. But these sort of Scottie and Xander, and they're just so sensible and practical, and they don't let their emotions sort of chase them down rabbit holes. And all of us. I don't know if I've ever seen
Xander really mad.
No, I don't think he gets that mad. I mean, he's very competitive, but he doesn't. It's that Germanic sort of, it's like Bernard Langer. It's just Martin Keimer. They just, I hit it to the right. Next time I'll try to hit it a bit further to the left. There's no, I suck. I can't do this anymore. Like, what am I doing? I'm useless. Like, there's none of that. It's like, oh, well, that went right, so I'll hit it further left next time. Like, how do you do that? Like, it's impressive.
I love to hear that you walked around a golf course saying you suck, because that's what I tend to do.
I think most of us do at times.
That's what I tell people all the time. Like, you play with golf with people that aren't very good, or like, they're like, I suck in golf. Is like, I usually say to them, I got good news for you. Like, number 5 in the world is probably telling himself he sucks at golf right now too.
All the time, It's just what makes us human. It's like golf would be boring if you didn't yell at yourself every now and then. As long as you give yourself the pat on the back when you do hit a good shot, I think it's all good.
Yeah, that's the word. The people that are unbearable on the golf course are the ones that that aren't happy after the good shots.
Yeah, they're miserable. They're
still
all day,
mad
and then
about
they hit
the
a good shot, and then they're still grumpy. Yeah, but I could have hit it closer.
What? I guess there's it's been a while since we talked. I'd love to hear about your favorite new pro golf swing.
I'll probably have a few. Jake Knapp is fun to watch. Like, that's how we kind of all want to swing it, loose and easy. And infinite speed. It looks really natural, and I don't know. I love watching him swing it. I think he swings it great. Minwoo Lee's fun to watch. Like we just mentioned Minwoo Lee, but he is. If you look at it technically, it's what we're all trying to do, you know. It just creates infinite speed. He's a small guy, not a small guy, but he's not a mountain of a guy, and just creates crazy speed.
So Minwoo, I was at it would have been the 2017 or the 2018 Western Am, and I went to University of Illinois. Illinois had this great golfer who's PGA Tour winner, Nick Hardy, and Nick gets in the round of 16 and he's matched up against Minwoo Lee. And I didn't really know much about Minwoo Lee at this point. And I'm just sauntering around and I go over to the first tee and Nick tees off, and then Minwoo gets up there and he hits this drive, and I just was like, oh my God, that guy. I'll never forget the moment. Cause Nick Hardy was an all-American golfer, and I watched Minwoo Lee swing the club, and I was like, it was just different, you know? And I think Minwoo went out and beat him 6-4 that day. It was just they both are bona fide tour players now, but I'll never forget. It's like when you see some swing, a truly great swing, I feel like for the first time, you never forget where you are. You just 100%. Can crystallize the memory.
Where were you when you first saw Minwoo Lee? Yeah. Rory was like that. The first time I saw and stood next to Rory when he hit a shot, it's like, oh, that's different. That's better than everyone else. I've never seen that. Minwoo, there's a cool story. When Jason Day was number one in the world, just won the PGA, he was back in Australia, and he does a clinic for the Australian junior team, whatever. And they're all there's 15, 16, it must have been the same sort of time. And they're all sitting around, and Jason's hitting some balls and talking through how he works on his game and all that sort of stuff. And they get on to hitting it long, and Jason hits a couple really hard, and one of them puts their hand up and says, you won't hit it past Minwoo. And Jason's like, well, number one, come on. This little scrawny little kid. Minwoo stands up there and just shells it 30 past him, and he just broke Jason, I think, that day. It was, he's been like that since day one. And his sister's been number one in the world. It's a cool family. Minwoo, he's got a big future if he can just put all the pieces together. He has all the pieces. It's as we were saying, it's really hard to get to the top now, but he swings it great and hits it great. Lots of talent. Great move.
I think the big question, honestly, and I think Bryson's reined it in a little, is there an upper limit where once you hit a certain spot, you're just you can't control the ball? The further the ball goes, the further the ball goes offline. And I think that's a question, realistically. Because I think there are a lot of players Rory McIlroy he could swing it. He could get, let's just say 5-6 more miles per hour ball speed more with no problem. But why doesn't he? I think that's one of my questions. It's
I think we underestimate humans forever. I think you can probably keep hitting it further and further and straighter, but I think there's a point. Golf is still going to be, it's never not going to be lowest score win. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns at some point. And hitting the ball 340 yards dead straight every time and 350 yards dead straight every time, if that last 10 yards sort of takes away from something in your scoring somewhere else in your game, it's not, the net result's going to be negative. I just think the best golfer is still the guy who hits it closest to the hole and makes the most putts. You can't do that off the tee. So I think absolutely there's a massive return in your game if you hit the ball 280, then all of a sudden you can hit the ball 320 in the fairway. And yes, just by physics, it's just the further you hit it, the more offline it's going to go. The straighter you actually have to hit the ball, the further you hit it, because 1 degree offline at 100 yards is a lot less than 1 degree offline at 400 yards. But I think as far as the lowest score, there's going to be a point where the risk you're taking for injury and the stuff that you're doing in the gym, and maybe the long drive guys I've ever played golf with, Jamie Sidlowski, I've played with quite a few times, and other guys, they're short games and their knowledge of how far they're short. It's hard to rein in your 9-iron swing when all you do is try to swing it as hard as you can. If you don't know how far your 9-iron's going, it doesn't matter how far you drive it. So I think there's a massive effect on your score to a certain point, but I think at some point it's going to start affecting your scoring in a negative way. And I don't think it's really, can we keep hitting it straight and far? I'm sure we can. But what does that do to the rest of your game?
It seems like for the high-speed player, the wedges are generally, like, why is it so hard, as someone who never swung at that speed, like, why is it so hard for the high-speed player to have that corresponding elite wedge game, like take the speed off?
I don't know. You'd probably have to ask a biomechanics guy or a coach or something. It feels like the best wedge players are deader hands. They're not loading the club and lagging it really hard, and it's more dead sort of. Hogan would call it the arm swing, and Tiger will talk about how he take his, almost like you're trying to get the hands out of it. The great wedge players are trying to take speed out of their swing almost. Like a great wedge player looks like they're swinging it really hard. The ball is going really slow. That makes sense.
Yeah.
They're not like sort of, the ball seems to come off slow on a great wedge player, and the ball seems to fly in slow motion. It's not going fast. And I think there's a mismatch with trying to hit it as far as you can with a driver. At some point, it's the same swing with the different club. Well, not the same swing, but if you do the same, if you do 500 drivers as hard as you can, and then you just go try to hit a wedge, it's not going to be a very good wedge swing. You still got to find that balance. I don't know. There's obviously, you'd have to ask coaches and stuff, but to me, the great wedge players, I don't think they're great wedge players just because they're short hitters. I think there's a balance. Tiger was incredibly long and a great wedge player, but it's a different skill. I think if you focus overly on one skill, another one of the skills, if you overly focus on your wedges, your driver, you're not going to hit it as far. But if you overly focus on hitting the driver a really long way, you're probably not going to hit your wedges very well. So I think you're going to have to find the balance.
It's almost, it sometimes feels like a different swing in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, as I said, I played with Jamie Sedlowski, who won the long drive thing a few times, and he hit the ball so far it was silly. Like he'd drive it over long par and won. And it was like just so fun to watch. But he could be 140 yards and he didn't know what club to hit. Like he couldn't hit it soft enough with a wedge to not hit it over the green sometimes. So when he was in his long driving mode, when he was really trying to win the long drive tournament, you go out and play with him, and it was hard to watch because he'd be 120 and he'd hit sand iron 30 yards over the green. It was just everything about his move, his explosion, and hit it hard. And to rein that in, it's not that easy. It's hard to hit it that far, but it's hard to rein it back as well. And to hit it as hard as you can on the first shot of the hole, and then take all the speed off on the next shot. But then on the very next shot on the next hole, you're trying to hit as hard as you can again, and then you're trying to rein it in. Hit it hard and try to rein it in. I think they're clearly skills that are opposite ends of the spectrum, and I think if you're always on one end of the spectrum, you lose the other one.
The game, especially with the distance, if you could just drive it really far, wedge it really well, you win everywhere. But Absolutely. It seemed like to me, like the matching up great driving ability with great wedge play is just so hard,
It seems like it is. It's the same. Look, we all just even take the distance out of it, just golf in general. Like if you focus on one area of your game exclusively for a while or too much, you get really good at that, but the other stuff drops off. Like you still have to, 14 clubs in the bag that you've got to be good with, And look, I know there's probably a relationship with 4-iron, 5-iron, 6-iron, 7-iron. They're kind of the same. Like if you're working on a 6-iron, you're probably helping your 4-iron and all that. But basically, there's 14 clubs you have to get good at. If you neglect any of those, you're going to get worse at it. You definitely get better if you focus on one thing. it's just, I'm sure there'll be, look, we didn't think anyone would ever hit 350 20 years ago and be a pro, and now there's 10 of them. I think it's going to surprise us. There'll be someone who hits it 380 yards in 20 years' time and is the best wedge player on tour. It's going to happen, and they'll work out how to do it. But I don't know. It's I think that's the challenge. You can't lose focus on that. They write checks and they give tournaments for the lowest score. And like, you got to work on what makes you have a lower score. And I think for most people, that's hitting it quite a long way. But at some point, it moves back to something else. Hit irons, short game, putting, something else. Because you don't see bad putters play well. You don't see bad putters win tournaments. You see short drivers win tournaments. You don't see bad putters win tournaments.
I think like what you hit on is so right too, is like, and the margins are so small that like a minuscule drop in, your iron play could take you from 20th in approach to 50th in approach, and going from above average to almost average in a skill on the PGA Tour is like, that's not good. It's going to show in the amount of tournaments you win or have a chance to win at the end of the year.
It's a total. I mean, the courses have a bit to do with it. We get presented courses that if you don't hit it far, it's really difficult to compete. So we all go home every week after a Sunday or a Friday and say, right, well, how do I do better? How do I win? And you analyze your round. It's like, well, if I was a little bit closer to the green, I would do better, because the guys who did well this week hit it far. So you go work on hitting it far. But at some point, everyone's going to hit it far. And it's going to be, we're going to start analyzing and saying, well, no, it's the guy, he was the best wedge player, or he was the best putter. And everyone's going to turn and start working more on that stuff. It's still, as far as everyone's hit it, we're getting to a point, it feels like, where everybody hits it far now. And I think the focus all at the start of last year, was the start of last year when Scottie changed his putter?
Yeah.
His year got turned around. Scottie Scheffler, he's the best golfer in the world. Colin Morikawa is the best golfer in the world, and Xander, like 1, 2, and 3, those three guys. Take Rory out of it from a little bit. Nobody walks around saying, oh, how fast does Colin Morikawa swing it? How fast? I mean, Xander hits it far, but nobody really talks about it. They're like, how complete is his game, and how good is his putting, and how good is his short game? So right at the pointy end of golf, speed isn't really talked about that much. It's everybody else that talks about speed. So it's a big part of it. I mean, Bryson's obviously really long. Rory's really, really long. But at the end of the US Open, people weren't talking about Rory's driving letting him down. It was the other end of the golf bag that was the difference in the end. So it's a fun thing to focus on, but it's not. If you really look at score, it's slightly overvalued, I think, at the moment.
If you look at the top 10 players in the world golf rankings right now, and obviously Rahm and Bryson aren't in it, that would probably be in it. But if you just take the top 10 in the world right now, you go, Scottie is not like overly long. And when I say this, he's still very long by like, standards of 10 years ago, right? But Scottie's not overly long. I think Xander's pretty long. Rory's number 2. He's obviously very long. Colin's not that long. Ludwig, very long. Hideki Matsuyama, not that long. Russell Henley, not that long. Wyndham, very long. JT, not that long. And Tommy Fleetwood, not that long. Yeah,
I mean, so I think it's fun to talk about, and it's what you brag when we all came in when we were kids at like little junior tournaments. It's like, oh, I hit 7 on it at 40. What did you hit in? That's what I mean. It's always been a thing. Like, it's never not going to be a thing. No one says, well, I had 22 putts. Like, no one flexes on their, like, how many putts they hold. Everybody.
They tell you how many they missed.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, Tiger was the best because he had the best short game and he held the most putts when it mattered. And that's never going to change. It's just not going to change. Fun to talk about. And we all have egos. And hitting it past your playing partner is the funnest thing in golf, But winning tournaments is pretty fun too. So I think it's a fun thing to talk about speed, you have to work on it. It's one of those things. You never had to work on it when I started playing. Now it's something you have to work on. Otherwise, you can't compete. But you can't work on it to the neglect of everything else.
All right, this was a players pod, but it's turned into a philosophical podcast about golf. Who's your pick?
Players Championships, hard to pick.
It's impossible to pick.
It is the hardest tournament to pick historically. How about Colin Morikawa?
It's a good pick. It's a good pick. Almost got it done last week. I'll take Scottie Scheffler. You know, I'm really going out on a limb.
Brave.
Very brave.
Has anyone ever won it 3 times?
I don't think anybody's won it. I know nobody's won it 3 times in a row. I mean, Jack won it all those times before it went to. I don't know if anybody's won it 3 times at Sawgrass.
Davis won it twice. Freddie won it twice.
Tiger won it twice.
That'd be an amazing effort if he can win the Players Championship. Yeah, that'd be 3 in a row around there.
Yeah, that'd be insane. I'm trying to see anybody else. Hal Sutton has 2 too, and Steve and Elkington too. So
Norman, did he win it twice?
Let's see. I don't think so. He did not.
Blew the field away when Fuzzy Zeller was waving. That was the Fuzzy Zeller waved the white flag back. But replay the Wingfoot US Open white flag. Didn't he shoot 25 under or something way back in the day, Greg?
24. Norman was 24 under. Insane.
Yeah.
All right, Geoff, thank you for your time. We will talk again sometime soon. And yeah, look forward to great players. All right. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. Big thanks to PJ Clark. He's pulling late duty here. He's been on the grounds, first players in person, producing this pod, the Shotgun Start. He's making magic happen for us here. And big thanks to him putting this together. We'll be back next week to talk players. We will talk players, maybe do another topic, eclectic topic, but you'll hear from us next week. Thanks, and talk to you soon.